What do you say, everybody? And welcome to the Bama Insider YouTube channel. It's time for Monday Night Quarterback. Tony Tsoukalas and me, Mick, Gillispie. And before we talk about Alabama, what happened Saturday, what's going to happen this coming Saturday, and a bunch of other storylines, let me remind you that Monday Night Quarterback is always brought to you by the great people at Westgate Luxury Condominiums. There they are, 200 feet from Bryant-Denny Stadium. They're luxurious. The people that work there are fantastic, including our friend Julian, who just handed that guy his card. They have the Skygate Club. Look, I've been over there so much now, Tony. I know the people in the video, but really, I mean, the apartments are great. You got the oversized balconies. You got the spacious kitchens. You're right next to everything. Bryant-Denny, Denny Chimes, the Quad, campus, the Strip. You know, anything that you want to do in Tuscaloosa is right there. And then game days at the Skygate Club, fantastic. That's where we do our post-game show after Alabama football games. I mean, they cater it. It's just really an awesome experience. I mean, really. I mean, it's like taking tailgating to the next level. And there are units available right now. You can find out more information at westgateal.com. Westgateal.com. 1 to 5 bedroom units that range from 900 to 3,000 square feet. So find out about it. And I'm telling you, you're coming to town and you're looking for somewhere to, just for the weekend, you can rent those as well. And you will not be disappointed. I'm absolutely blown away by how cool the Westgate luxury condominiums are. All right, Tony, well, let's dig in here. People like and subscribe as you hang out with us on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Let me throw this on the screen. I didn't want to ruin the surprise as I put that up, but there you go, Tony. I am an Alabama grad. I try to be objective, but when it comes to this game, I was really happy to see Alabama win 24-22. An incredible game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, basically college football's version of a penalty kick in soccer. I forgot about, heading into the game, I actually forgot about that wrinkle this season where they go for two. So that was wild to watch. I'm not sure if I like that or not, but it was kind of entertaining. It was, it was just a crazy game. The whole game, you kind of felt like Alabama was going to finally break through, but they just didn't until the last minute. This offensive line, it needs a lot of help. Fortunately, though, Bryce Young was able to kind of bail them out, and he kind of came alive right at the right time. But it's never easy to go into Jordan-Hare and win. And I think, even I made the mistake in my prediction. It could be anything on paper. It sounds cliche. Like Alabama should have won this game by a ton, but it's one of the toughest places to play, especially for this game. So any outcome that Alabama leaves Jordan-Hare with a win, they'll take it. Is there a lot of stuff to fix for this SEC championship game? Of course. But, I think when you look at it from Alabama's perspective, just get out alive and keep that season alive. So a wild win. It's a win that Alabama fans should really savor and should really, kind of enjoy. I think a lot of times we don't get to enjoy wins. There's so many you're always focused on what's next in any kind of program. And so, my advice to Alabama fans would just be soak this one up and enjoy it, because this has got to be one of the most entertaining Iron Bowls in recent memory.
Yeah, look, it's a classic. I mean, it's one of the all-time greats, especially down there for Alabama. I mean, they've lost the kick six and, some of the other ways that they've lost.
Normally, when it's a close game, Auburn's the one winning it. And you know what I'm saying? The Alabama wins lately have been blowouts. So I think the last close win that Alabama had, I think you probably have to go back to the 2009 season, right?
2009,
right? Yeah,
that's it. Yep. Upchurch caught the pass from McElroy. Yep, that was it. And they really haven't been that close when Alabama's won. But they got a victory down on the Plains, 24-22. They had the drive, we'll call it. First in 97. It was really third in 97, and they ended up going down the field and scoring. So it was a great game for Alabama and a win for the Crimson Tide. Obviously, it sets them up for the SEC championship game. So we're talking a lot about that, as we move forward. And let me throw this guy's face on the screen. And of course, I'm talking about Alabama's Will Anderson. Will Anderson, the UGA? Tony?
Yeah. I mean, Will Anderson was another great game for him. 3 tackles for a loss and a sack. It's just where would Alabama be without Will Anderson? And the fact that he grew up as a Georgia fan is crazy to think about, because where would Alabama be if he was suiting up in scarlet and black for this game? It's kind of scary for Alabama to think about.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and crazy to think Georgia has one of the best defenses ever. Can you imagine had they, somehow gotten him too?
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. They're already stacked. I mean, this might be the best defense that that Georgia's ever had. And the fact that you could just add, the best the best player, in my opinion, the best player in college football into that unit. I just think that'd be insane, So fortunately for Alabama fans, he's on their side for this game, and I can't imagine it'd be this Georgia defense would be virtually unstoppable if they had Will Anderson.
No doubt about it. Well, thank goodness for Alabama, they have Will Anderson. Bama has a lot of trouble, though, as far as injuries and other issues going into this SEC championship game. And I guess the one that we're all wondering about is the running back spot, which is decimated right now. What's the latest on Brian Robinson?
Yeah, he's got a lower muscle pull, Alabama's, according to Nick Saban today, Alabama's kind of evaluating it on a day-to-day basis. I think, it sounded like there's a possibility for him to be able to go, but if he's not, Alabama's down to one running back, and it's Trey Sanders. So if you look at that, and Nick Saban was asked if he's ever had running depth problems, and the way he's had this season, and he really hasn't, and nobody really has. Alabama came in with probably the most loaded backfield in the nation, and then has seen it chip away each game. Brian Robinson, he obviously left the Iron Bowl in the fourth quarter, and didn't participate didn't play in the overtime. Trey Sanders is a 5-star back and somebody that is really good. And there's a lot of teams that wish they had a Trey Sanders, but most teams have more than one option at running back, and I don't think Trey Sanders hasn't had an extended workload. So you look at him, they'd probably have to use someone else. And then you're dipping into Christian Leary or you're dipping into Demoy Kennedy in an SEC championship game, which is kind of crazy to think about. So Alabama, really has to hope that Brian Robinson's able to perform.
But would a Brian Robinson that's not close to 100% really help Alabama? I mean, he struggled in the Iron Bowl to run the ball. He struggled against LSU to run the ball. And it almost feels like he's been dealing with some injuries this year. And, I mean, you got to feel bad for him because the guy totes the rock so much.
Yeah, I mean, well, you look, I think he got hurt on like a 37-yard run. So, I mean, like he did break, at least one big gain. And you look at it from his standpoint, or from the standpoint of, would you be better with him or without him? I think actually most of the time I tend towards no if a guy's injured, but I mean, he's at least a scholarship running back. You know what I'm saying? Like, is a 60% Brian Robinson better than Christian Leary at running back? I don't know that. I actually don't know that, because I don't know really what you can do with Christian Leary at running back. I know I wrote about him on the site, and there's a lot of things you can do with him. He's surprising, but I think that's a nice, from a complimentary standpoint. I don't think you want to be handing double-digit carries off to Christian Leary. He's still a slot receiver. He still hasn't, if he was going to be a running back, they would have put more weight on him. You know what I'm saying? Like, they would have developed him more into a running back. So it's kind of scary. And then the Demoy Kennedy, I mean, look, he's a defensive player that's playing offense. I think Alabama needs Brian Robinson. I don't see how they do it really without him. I know they'll probably pass a lot more. And then you got a great quarterback in Bryce Young who can kind of compensate for a lot. But you can't go into a game against the nation's #1 defense with one running back and expect to make it out alive.
Yeah, well, that's what Alabama's going to try to hope for in this game Saturday. Hey, guys, as we talk to you tonight and you watch Monday Night Quarterback, please do us a favor and like and subscribe as you hang out here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Love seeing all the comments in the comment section. You guys keep it going. He's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillispie. And let's move over to another area where Alabama's had trouble, and that's offensive line.
Yeah, and it was pretty rough during the Iron Bowl. Bryce Young got sacked 7 times. Alabama just can't figure out that right tackle position. They had Damian George. He struggled. They put in Chris Owens at that spot. Chris Owens hasn't been great this year. Really, nobody besides Evan Neal, has been really reliable across that front. I mean, Evan Neal is a top 10 pick, but outside of him, it's been up and down for pretty much every person on that unit.
Right.
Darian Dalcourt has been dealing with injuries. Emil Ekiyor has, been kind of up and down. Same with Javian Cohen at both those guard spots. And then we talked about the struggles at right tackle. The talent's there. Every one of those guys is pretty talented player. It's just a matter of getting it all to come together. And it could be an issue, especially when you look at Georgia's defensive line, their pass rushers. Bryce Young can escape, but you don't want to have him scrambling for his life every play. It's hard to build up an offense with that. And then you talk about from a running back standpoint, you don't want to become one-dimensional. And if you can't win the battle in the trenches, then, it doesn't matter if Brian Robinson can go or not. Like you said, he's going to struggle if everything closes down on him, and especially if he's not at 100%. So I think the offensive line is going to have to drastically improve. It has the ability, it has all year. And we've seen this offense put up big points against top 20 defenses in Mississippi State and Texas A&M, or at least top 25 defenses. So they're capable of doing it. I think it's just going to need a much better performance than the one they saw last week.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, it seems like the offensive line hasn't really been able to put together 2 really good games in a row. And in the last couple SEC games, I mean, they played well against Arkansas. They struggled against LSU. And then Saturday was a big time struggle.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just, but I think, we spoke about it. There's a lot of injuries and there's a lot of things going wrong, but, I think that you could also look back at the game against, Ole Miss and the game against, Mississippi State. And there are times when, we've seen this offensive line do what it's supposed to do. So you just got to look at it that way. From an optimistic standpoint, is like the talent's there for it to do it. It's just a matter of getting all those guys to execute. But you're right. It doesn't seem to be trending in the right direction. I mean, with LSU, and with the Auburn game, it is a little bit, the offense moved a little bit better against Tennessee, but even that game, it seemed like things were not super great until the fourth quarter. So yeah, it's something that needs to be figured out. And you really can't even go on a lull against this Georgia defense. If you have a bad quarter, it could result in turnovers. The one thing I will say is I don't necessarily think Georgia's offense is going to be able to pull away. So unless Alabama shoots itself in the foot a bunch, I think they're going to stay close. And then, if you can protect a quarterback like Bryce Young and in a close game, you saw what could happen against Auburn. And he's just kind of he's so composed and he's got that ability to kind of just get things done. I think that, that could be a big thing. But yeah, it's definitely, that's the biggest red flag around Alabama right now. And I think if you ask anyone, that's what they'd say.
Alabama plays Georgia 3:00 on Saturday in the SEC championship game. Back to the SEC championship game again. I feel like of all the games that Alabama's played in the championship game in the Nick Saban era, and I know people might say, well, 2008 when they played Tim Tebow in Florida, I felt more confident in that game than I do about Alabama's chances in this one. Tony, they're a 6.5-point underdog right now. 84% of the money's on UGA. I know that you're not a gambling guy, but at the same time, I mean, that just kind of shows you that everybody thinks Georgia's going to win.
Yeah, and I think the expectations around Alabama are different now than they are then. I think maybe if this Alabama team was in that situation, maybe people are more optimistic about it. I think they're used to seeing Alabama, especially coming off of last season, right? They're used to seeing them dominate. So to see an
Right.
Alabama team that has to struggle so much, it only, emphasizes the difference from last year's team. I don't necessarily think this Alabama team is a bad team or it's like undeserving of being where it is in this point of the season. If anything, it probably got some unlucky bounces that, I don't think you would call this Alabama team lucky this year. So I think from an expectation standpoint, of course there's going to be negativity around this team. It's just not the Alabama team you're used to seeing. I think it's probably, we were talking before the show, it's probably the worst Nick Saban team in a while. I'm not ready to say it's the worst Nick Saban team since like something drastic like 2007. I'd have to really break it down.
But talent-wise, I don't think that's a crazy
it
statement.
does have perhaps, you can make the argument that it has the best offensive and best defensive player in college football on the same team. How many teams have that talent-wise? You might have the Heisman winner and then the best defensive player on the other side of the ball. So the talent might be there. It's just, it should have been a transition year. And in any team, look at per se what Clemson's doing, right? Their transition year looks a lot different than Alabama's transition year. And that's just a matter of, this is such a testament to Nick Saban and the product he continues to put out, because this team shouldn't, be, most teams don't go from a kind of team that they had last year, like that Alabama had last year, and transition it to another playoff run. Look at what LSU did. Look at Clemson this year. Like there's usually that drop off year, and Alabama just doesn't have those. So this is, when you're evaluating Alabama, you got to kind of keep that in mind. This was supposed to be that year. And I mean, shoot, if they beat Georgia, they're probably going to be number one. They'll probably play someone like Cincinnati. You have to take them in that game, and then they're sitting one game away from the title. So I mean, as many question marks and as weird as this season's been for Alabama, they're not that far off of attaining their goal. It seems like a long shot when you look at it this way, but I mean, if things go right on Saturday, Alabama's in excellent shape.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, if they win Saturday, they'd be number one, and they play, a Cincinnati if they don't lose to Houston. There could be a lot of shakeup between now and next Tuesday, actually next Sunday night when they announce the playoff field. And I'll throw this up here for you now, Tony, to talk about, because a couple of weeks ago, we probably would have thought it was crazy to say that it's possible. But can a 2-loss Alabama team make the college football playoff? And if so, how?
Okay, so actually, yes. Do I think it will happen? Probably not. But there is definitely a path for a 2-loss Alabama team to make the playoff. I mean, of course, if everyone loses, right? So, but if you look at the teams that, would have to lose, they're all losable games. Michigan would have to lose the Big Ten championship, which, I mean, could happen. That's an Iowa team that is decent, right? And Michigan's a team that's coming off of a big win against Ohio State. So, that's another thing where, maybe they're riding that win and they overlook it and lose. I think you probably also would like Cincinnati to lose if you're Alabama. Well, they're playing a Houston team who's playing really well right now. And I think it's going to be one of the best teams they've played all season. Maybe they beat Cincinnati. And if both of those things happen and Alabama loses, you really got to look at who are you going to take. I don't think you would take anybody from the Big Ten. And I don't think, you definitely wouldn't take Cincinnati. So you probably take the Big 12 champion. You could take Notre Dame, but then you're probably taking Alabama all the same. So, I think there's definitely a way. Now, for all that to happen, even with all that, Alabama can't just come in and get spanked by Georgia. They'd have to have a close loss. But we've seen Nick Saban win 2 national titles without winning the SEC, so it's definitely doable. And even in this year, it's doable. I'm sure Alabama would prefer to win this game. And the crazy thing, Mick, is if they win this game, they're number one. They lose it, they might not be in the playoff. So it's just kind of crazy how much of a swing game this is.
Yeah, that's the scary part of if you're pulling for Alabama to get in there is that this is as pivotal of a game as I can remember. I mean, we all assume that Georgia is going to kill Alabama and they're going to be in, right? They're unstoppable. And this Alabama team definitely has its warts and its weaknesses, and that there's no chance that they can win. But, if they do, yeah, they're going in at number one. And if they lose, then, chances are we're not going to see them in the playoff. Although, stranger things have definitely happened. And who knows, if Alabama finds a way to get into the college football playoff, there's some time between the next game, right? Maybe they get enough time to heal up.
Maybe, especially guys like, Brian Robinson, he'll be, you would imagine by the time the playoff rolls around, he'd be at 100%. If it so happens that they get to play Cincinnati, I mean, you can say no disrespect, full disrespect. I don't care. I don't think Cincinnati has a team capable of beating Alabama, even as banged up as they are. So if they do beat Georgia, I think that, if they end up playing Cincinnati, I really like their chances in that. And then you're talking about a championship game. And at that point, Alabama is pretty good in championship games. I know they lost a couple to Clemson, but, I think that they'd have just as good of a chance. So it is such an important game, like you said. From an injury standpoint, I think that that's a good point too, because are there other people that could come back? I haven't really thought about that, but I think that the more time this season goes, it also gives your offensive line some time to gel as well.
Yeah.
So maybe that gets figured out a lot more. In that month leading up to the playoff. That's another thing that Alabama could really help itself. But it's something to consider. This is the biggest game Alabama's played in a very long time. That's not a playoff game.
Right. This is one of the biggest needs for a win that they've played in a long time. Normally, they're the team that could possibly lose and still get in, which leads me to this guy right here. And I guess our final topic tonight. And that's and it says Brian, but let me pull that off and fix that. Of course, we're talking about Bryce Young. And is he possibly the Heisman Trophy winner this year?
Look, he controls it, and he's probably the only person left that controls his own fate, really. Because if he has a good game, I don't even think he needs to win against Georgia. If he makes it close and has a good game and puts up good numbers against Georgia, I think he'll have it. I think you look at C.J. Stroud, the last memory the voters are going to have is a loss. Now, he performed pretty well, or statistically against Michigan. He didn't have a bad game, but he's not going to have the numbers because he didn't get to play as many games. And then the last game, kind of that last taste they have of him is going to be a loss. Now, if Bryce loses, then he would still, it'd be the same case with him with the last taste being a loss. But those numbers, if he has a good game or a solid game against Georgia, I think would be more justifiable. You look at, I think, you could say if Pittsburgh has a big game that, maybe he can win it. I just think things would have to go crazy, crazy bad for Bryce Young and crazy good in the other games for anything, like drastic outside of CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. I think something really drastic would have to happen. What do you think?
I agree. Look, I think Bryce Young has his own destiny in his hands. The problem is that the offensive line's a part of that. And this is the toughest challenge that these guys are going to have. And I'm just not sure that they're up to the challenge. What we've seen is that teams overload certain guys because they can't handle one-on-one. And then they get, two guys coming in there and they don't know what to do. And, and Bryce doesn't have a whole lot of options out of the backfield. Losing McClellan really kills him because, you try that stuff and you got McClellan, you just flip the ball off to him and he's going to make you pay. Alabama's definitely limited in options for Bryce Young at running back. And then the offensive line has had holes. But at the same time, the guy found a way against Auburn when all the chips were down, right? He had that moment. So I think if he has a good game, whether Alabama wins or not, I would think that he is the Heisman. And to be honest with you, Alabama has 3 Heisman Trophy winners. Mark Ingram won it. Alabama's offense, they could have. I think that someone else could have done the same thing. I mean, he was great, but Derrick Henry obviously was a one-man machine. They couldn't have done it without him. And then Smitty last year had a great season, but you know what? At the same time, I mean, it's almost like Mac Jones is getting the ball to everyone. Of all those guys, and I love them all. Look, I love them all. I mean, I think they're all great players. I don't know that there's ever been a player that has had a bigger impact on the team since Nick Saban's been there than this guy, besides Derrick Henry. So I mean, I put it right up there with Derrick Henry. I mean, he was, the offense on the ground by himself, and he's the only running back. Bryce Young has been a force. And he's been a one-man force. I mean, they drop the ball all the time, and he still ends up getting it to him. The guys, the demeanor's been great. And I honestly feel like, Tony, without Bryce Young at quarterback, I think Alabama might have 4 losses right now.
Especially with the way that this offensive line plays. Going back to that, Paul Tyson would be the backup, had Bryce gotten hurt early in the season. And, I just don't know, not taking any away from him, but just his style of quarterback. I mean, I think even if you put Mac Jones back on this team, his style of quarterback just doesn't translate with this offensive line. So I think he has some big trouble if you didn't have Bryce Young. I think his ability to buy time, keep his eyes downfield, and just really make plays with his legs in the backfield, that has helped out Alabama tremendously, and they don't really have anybody else on their roster that can do that. I know Jalen Milroe has some wheels, and we've seen him kind of run, but I don't know that he could do the keeping plays alive and kind of the awareness that Bryce Young has. I don't think anyone has that mixture of athleticism and awareness. So yeah, you're right. I'm trying to think of, that they definitely probably lose last game. And then, maybe the LSU games, at least 3.
Look, they could have lost Arkansas. They could have lost Tennessee. They could have lost Florida. They lost Texas A&M.
Yeah. You can't give them all losses, but yeah.
LSU. I mean, there's a lot of losses in there, though.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of ones that, shoot. You probably should put Arkansas in there because Bryce Young threw for 550 yards,
Yeah. Think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't lose all of them, but you could, because there's not he's the difference making player this time. Every year you talk about those explosive guys, and it's him. It's him. I mean, he's the difference maker. It's not Brian Robinson. He's been consistent, but he's not explosive. He doesn't take it to the house. He doesn't have that amazing burst that we've seen with so many of the other Alabama running backs. Look, John Mechie had a great game, and he also dropped a lot of balls. Jamison Williams wasn't there last game, and this guy and then the offensive line doesn't block all the time, and they don't pick up blitzes, and some of the running backs don't do it, and somehow this team continues to win. And I mean, you got to give him credit for that. They're 11-1, and we can sit here and talk about all these problems that they have. And I think that's kind of what Coach Saban was talking about last Wednesday night. It's like, hey, you know what? I mean, when I got here, you just wanted to win a game, and now you don't appreciate it. I don't think it's that. I think that people just we care so much about this team and this program. We've seen so many really fantastic teams that this is a team that is fantastic in the way that they know how to win, but there's a lot of holes there too. He makes up for them.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been excellent, and he's just been so calm and collected, and you forget that, he's still his first year as a starter. I mean, that's gone and passed, and now he's got 12 starts under his belt. But it's just crazy that coming into this season he had virtually no experience too, because they really couldn't get him into games, because of the COVID year last year. And so he didn't really get that many opportunities behind Mac Jones. And so for him to just step in behind a rickety offensive line without, 2 first-round receivers, it's kind of crazy that just to think about what, he was able to do.
Yeah. And then the other part, and you kind of mentioned this too, there is no second place guy. I mean, it maybe CJ Stroud and then after, Mel, I'll say he's second, and then after that, there's a big drop off, right? And then Kenny Pickett, huge drop off, right?
Yeah. And so I mean, like, I was trying to say earlier, I was actually forgetting Pickett's name for a second. It's just that kind of tells you about him as a Heisman contender, I guess, or maybe just the the week I've had. But but if you look at him, right, he could have a great game against Wake Forest. His numbers are there, and if Bryce Young was to really struggle, and the fact that CJ Stroud hasn't played, maybe I just don't think that Pickett has been in the. I don't think Pickett's been in the eye long enough to really capture voters. And then Stroud's not going to get that extra time in the spotlight. So it really does come down to Young. If he just has a decent game, I think he should have it. I don't think it's going to go to any of the defensive players, although, my vote would probably be for Will Anderson. It's impossible really for a defensive player to win in today's game. They're just not going to allow it to happen. And then I think the other person that's up there is Kenneth Walker. And I don't know why he's up there, because first of all, like, he had a bad game in his biggest game, and then now he's not going to get a chance to play for his conference championship because Michigan State didn't make it. So he's probably the leader for the Doak Walker Award, but that's all he's getting. And then so it really is, for me, it's Bryce Young. It's CJ Stroud, and it's Kenny Pickett. And I think you can make an argument that because Kenny Pickett does control his own destiny more than Stroud does, maybe he actually could slip into that number 2 spot. But I really think it comes down to Bryce Young and what he does against Georgia.
Well, Tony, you'll be writing a lot. You'll be covering Alabama this week for Bama Insider. What do you have on tap?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a ton of stuff, on deck just with the coverage between, SEC championship game. We'll also, I'm sure we're going to get Nate Oates on the basketball side. I know that's not on anyone's mind right now, but, it's crazy. Alabama basketball, I know they fell out of the top 10, but they also, they played, number 3 Gonzaga this weekend. It's going to be a crazy weekend for Alabama. So between that, Andrew Bone always has you locked in with the recruiting. And look, things are going to get crazy over the next few weeks. Alabama had 2 players under the transfer portal. There's going to be more, outgoings. There could be incomings. So it's going to be definitely a lot to watch on the site.
Well, there was an incoming.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, didn't a guy announce today from Georgia Tech that he was coming to Alabama?
No, I mean, he announced that that's a guy I think Alabama is interested in.
Okay.
But I don't think that he hasn't announced where he's going.
Nothing official yet is what you're saying.
Right. He announced his transfer, or is it, that he's leaving Georgia Tech. Nothing about, joining Alabama. So,
okay. All right. Well, just checking. A lot of rumblings out there that he may be coming to Tuscaloosa. So, but look, that's the way that college football is going to work from now on. And like Alabama could lose, Kyle Henderson said they could lose like 5 or 6 more guys. And that's the way that it is. And then, the transfer portal works both ways. And Alabama did it with Jamison Williams and Henry To'o this year. And both of those guys start, and they're impact players.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a big thing. Alabama's going to plug the needs that they have. Maybe, if things don't get sorted out, maybe they'll be looking in the transfer portal for an offensive lineman for next year if they can't kind of figure out this unit. Now, they got a lot of young guys and a lot of talent, so it's hard to know what they're going to do, but that could be a thing. Talk about the transfers that worked. Everyone kind of forgets that Landon Dickerson was a former Florida State player, he's
that's
probably
right.
one of the best transfers they've had. So, between him and I guess The
Jake
two guys they
Coker.
got this year, especially Jamison Williams. I mean, they've been doing well when it comes to bringing in transfers.
No, Jake Coker won a national championship as quarterback at a
as well.
transfer.
Yeah, another guy. So
it came in at the right time. Guys, don't forget the Bama Insider Monday Night Quarterback Show is presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums, right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium, 200 feet away. Find out more information at westgateal.com. They've got 1 to 5 bedroom units available, the oversized balconies, 200 feet from Bryant-Denny Stadium, the amazing kitchens, the great hospitality. westgateal.com for more information on Westgate Luxury Condominiums. 900 to 3,000 square feet units and a kitchen that anyone would be proud of. The amazing kitchens right there near campus. All right, Tony, it was awesome hanging out with you, man. Have a great week and safe travels to Atlanta for the SEC championship game.
All right, Mick. Talk to you later.
All right, that's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillispie. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, guys. Thanks for being part of the show tonight. And don't forget, we got a bunch of stuff coming up tomorrow. Andrew Bone and Trey Yannity will be on to update you on Alabama's recruiting, the latest news in Crimson Tide recruiting, a class that is at the top right now, I guess at number 2 in the country, and looking to add some players to that. And then Kyle Henderson and I will be on at 6 o'clock to take a look at the college football playoff rankings. I'm guessing maybe Michigan goes into that 2 spot ahead of Alabama at 3. Who knows? Maybe Bama slides up to number 2. Georgia will be number 1. But it doesn't matter because all these championship games are coming up. Then Sunday we'll get back together again and we'll see how the cookie crumbles as Alabama tries to get in. So like, subscribe, hit the bell. Thanks for being here, guys, and appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Roll Tide.